Hi guys, it's Mark Zicree, also known as Mr. Sci-Fi, also known as Mark Zicree of Space Command, and many other things. Lots to talk about. And first of all, I just finished the draft of the pilot I'm writing for CW. A friend of mine pitched a great idea for a show and asked me to jump in and write the script when he and his partner, their draft needed help. And so this is what a pilot script looks like. I mean, there it is, fresh off the brain. So I'm very pleased with it. People are loving it and reading it and loving it. And so later today, it'll go to the president of the network. We'll see what happens. But, interesting stuff came out of the blue. I started writing it a week ago, and like a week ago Monday. And so now here we are, Wednesday of the next week. And I've completed it. It's 53 pages. And I'm really pleased with it. So there you are for that. Now, we move on to apologies. I kicked up a shitstorm with my video about Terminator: Dark Fate. So let me explain what I meant. I wasn't bad-mouthing anyone who was down on the film. It's absolutely fine if you didn't like the film. It's really split people. Some people really like it. Some people really don't. Though those who think they won't like it should probably go see it. I mean, I actually thought it was well crafted and I liked it. Yes, a lot of people have issues with what they do with John Connor, and I do too. It's very reminiscent of what they did with Newt and Bishop and Hicks in Alien 3. It's maybe there were reasons they couldn't use the adult Edward Furlong. Maybe there were reasons they wanted to go in a different direction. This is, I don't know. I think one of the problems with many of the sequels that we get nowadays, and this was certainly true of The Last Jedi, was they say, well, what would people be expecting? Well, like with Last Jedi, it'd be like, well, he'd be, Luke Skywalker would be, as an old man, he'd be brave. He'd be sort of like Obi-Wan Kenobi was. He'd be very, a great guy to follow. And they said, well, then let's turn that on its ear and let's have him just be a jerk, more or less. And, and it's like, well, okay, it didn't work, in my opinion, but so I think a lot of people might have that feeling about Terminator Dark Fate. For myself, I found it entertaining. I liked the cast. It was great to see Linda Hamilton again playing her iconic role. Interestingly, a member of my table actually was up for that role, was offered it before Linda Hamilton, and turned it down to do a Neil Simon movie. And of course, she spent decades regretting that choice. But that's how it goes. But so just to be clear, I don't think that everyone who badmouths this movie or doesn't like this movie is a misogynist or has, any of that stuff. I think it's absolutely fine to say that you didn't like the movie and so forth, and that you don't think the characters are strong or whatever. I was only really commenting on certain individuals on the far right who now feel it's okay to make anti-woman and anti-black and anti-Latino and anti-everything statements. I think that Trump, and again, look, I'm happy if you're a conservative and don't agree with my political views. We can all be under the tent of science fiction and love science fiction. So, and if you look at my comments when I respond to people, it's fine for people to have different opinions from mine. But what I do feel strongly about is that we need to respect each other. We need to come to each other with compassion. We need to work together to create a world worth living in. And we can do that. Star Trek proved that to us, that science fiction can be a positive force in the world. And that was certainly true of the space program and so forth. So again, if you don't agree with my opinions, fine. But I'm dismayed at how the modern political world has allowed certain things to be stated overtly that used to be not okay. And they aren't okay because they aren't empathic, they aren't compassionate. You should view everyone else as having the same right to full life, happiness, opportunity as you do. So that's what all of this is about. So again, I'm not trying to make speeches. I'm just trying to explain that it's fine if you didn't like the movie, and I wasn't trying to impugn anybody else. But that's me. It's okay. So and don't unsubscribe just because every now and then I'll say something you don't agree with, because we have a lot to talk about. Still, lots more of this future of science fiction, the history of science fiction to come. But it's okay. I'm sorry. I apologize, and I'll be more cautious in the future. But I'll still state my opinions. So that's why this is my channel. So beyond that, we're moving ahead with Space Command, the script I wrote for the CW, The Theurgist. is moving along. We'll see what happens with that. It may go to pilot, may go to series, or may just be a script I had fun writing. So, and I'm also working up Sweet Haven with Rockneil Bannon. That's moving along. The project with Mark Fergus is moving along. It's just, things are cool. Things are very exciting. So, and Space Command, we record the radio play this month. We shoot the framing story of Forgiveness in January and shoot the rest of Forgiveness in March. And meantime, I'm going to write all of the remaining material to write, etc. So it's an exciting time, building spaceships, building futuristic cars, building creatures. What's to complain about? So there's that stuff. Now, also, I wanted to talk about Ron Moore's new show, For All Mankind. And it's so interesting, the current landscape of television, because again, when I was a kid and when I started writing for television, there were 3 networks, there was syndication, but the opportunities for new shows were fairly limited. Now we've got over 500 of them and more to come. There's Apple debuting its network now, and Warner's is going to have a network, a VOD platform, as is pretty much everybody under the sun, Disney, NBC, etc. So Ron Moore told me the idea for All Mankind a few years ago, before it was even shot. And I thought it was a terrific idea, the idea of an alternate history where the Russians beat us to the moon, and then we continue the manned space program onto Mars and so forth. And it would be the history from 1969 until now. Terrific idea. And so Apple debuted the first 3 episodes on Monday, and I sat down and watched the 3 in succession. But I was confused as to what their release pattern was. I actually went into the Apple store to find out because, Netflix releases the entire series in one gulp, and HBO and so forth. The CBS All Access shows things 1 week at a time. I think CBS Access does it that way. I believe they do. But so I said, what's the deal here? And then basically, apparently, each week they'll release 3 more episodes until they have the entire season. Okay, fine. But it's a great show. I think the cast is terrific. They really nail the period. It just seems like you're watching something set back in the early or in the late '60s, and they get into the Werner von Braun stuff. And the alternate history is so fun because and they're very clever. They don't have actors playing people like Nixon and so forth. They have they show still photos or video, or and then have audio transcripts, like audio recordings of Nixon, the infamous recordings, so you can hear the actor who's imitating Nixon saying, what we need to say in this alternate history. Very, very fun. But the alternate history is it's cool because, like, for instance, when the Russians beat us to the moon, it's a crisis in America, of course, and so Congress reconvenes and Ted Kennedy cancels the party he was planning in Chappaquiddick to come back to D.C. So as a result, he isn't embroiled in that scandal, and he's free to run for president in '72. And so that's very fun. And so it'll be very interesting to see where they go. So far, I'm really liking it. They're doing a terrific job. The cast is uniformly very strong. And I know a ton about this stuff. I was fascinated with the space race when I was a kid, collected newspaper clippings of it, and watched all the flights, all the landings, all that stuff. And it's going to be really interesting to see where they go. And it's fascinating that the moon landing is now sort of behind us, 50 years behind us. It's nostalgia, when for those of us who grew up in that period, it was the future. It was the future unfolding, and unfortunately it wasn't a future that we got, the future we were expecting. So I've often said, no one ever predicted in science fiction that we'd go to the moon and then stop. And hopefully we can restart up again. Elon Musk, I think, is a great hope for the future, and I hope he beats the Chinese. I hope they don't land on the moon. I hope it's Elon Musk. So, I mean, land on Mars and so forth. I think the Chinese will get there, but I hope Musk beats him to it, just for my own personal passions. And I love the idea of a Heinlein kind of industrialist entrepreneur getting us to the moon, and that'll be and Mars. And so I urge you to watch the show. I found out something interesting. I have an Apple. I just got an Apple 11, I guess, whatever the new Apple is, the phone, and it allows me a free year of Apple TV. So if you have an iPhone, just check it out, or a MacBook Pro or whatever. You might be able to get a free year of this channel, and it's only $4.99 a month. I think it's worth it for this show, quite frankly. But just see. And of course, Ron Moore came up on Star Trek: Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and then did Battlestar Galactica and Outlanders. He's an amazing showrunner and writer, and I'm three cheers to him for taking this on. Very challenging project, and it'll be very interesting to see as it progresses to Mars and so forth what happens. Can't wait to see it. Now, also, I should mention that Stephen Baxter, who's a science fiction novelist, wrote a very good and similar novel called Voyage, in which we have an alternate timeline where instead of greenlighting the space shuttle, the Nixon administration greenlit a trip to Mars, for a manned mission to Mars, because Lee Harvey Oswald's assassination attempt missed Kennedy. It left him a paraplegic. It didn't kill him, killed Jackie, and as a result, then Kennedy is there during the moon landing with Nixon on the phone call to throw down the gauntlet about Mars. It's a very fun and a very good novel, and it was made into an extremely good radio adaptation by the BBC. You can probably find it on YouTube. You can also just probably go on eBay or wherever, BBC, and find it. But it's called Voyage by Stephen Baxter. It was adapted and directed and produced by Dirk Maggs, who also did the recent William Gibson Alien 3 adaptation, the unmade Alien script. But either way, check out For All Mankind. I think you'll really enjoy it. It's, again, it gets back to a question of what's the purpose of television? The greatest purpose, I think, is to inform, inspire, change the world for the better. I think at its worst, it can just be empty diversion that fills time so we don't have a life. So you don't go out and make friends. You don't go out and take risks. You don't go out and parasail or whatever. And so I think we have to be very careful that television doesn't devour our lives, or that we don't believe that the world is as we see it on TV in terms of the news. The news will make the world seem a lot more dangerous. It'll make the people seem a lot more threatening. When you actually travel, you find out that people are very much like you. Wherever you go, they want to raise their kids. They want to have safety. They want to be happy. And you find out that the world really is a smaller and better place than you might think if you just watch the news. So anyway, so that's about it for now. Just a short little commentary. So again, sorry, I didn't mean to step in the bear trap on Terminator Dark Fate. It was, but again, I am human too. I am possible of misstatement and pissing people off. God knows. But we're still selling Space Command shares. We have the GoFundMe campaign. We have Patreon. Throw some money our way. Every little bit helps. Honest to God, if we can devote ourselves to writing and directing and producing, stuff gets to you more quickly. We just got the last visual effects shots on 101D, which is the last 11 minutes of that first hour. So you're going to see it soon, and it's really quite wonderful. So that's about it for now. Mark Zickrey, Space Command, Mr. Sci-Fi, etc. More to come very, very soon. And thanks a lot for everything, guys. And I hope you're having a great time wherever you are. Take care, guys.